Welcome to the Blackwater Podcast. Today, your hosts Sage and Julius talk to Awen Ascension, world-renowned spiritual gangster. Awen is a psychic intuitive, astrologer, and sound healer. We hope you enjoy the show, and if you don't, we would love to hear about it.
Take two.
It's good to have you here today with us, Awen. We have Sage north of Atlanta on the phone, and I'm sitting with you in my bedroom. We've got some beautiful natural lighting, and I'm happy to have you here. I don't think we've spent that much time together, but the time that I have spent with you, I've always enjoyed your presence. Mm-hmm. You always give off a lot of warmth.
Thank you.
Yeah, I feel more grounded when I'm around you, actually.
Oh, thank you so much. I get that a lot. I think it's my 7 Earth placements in my birth chart. I have 6 planets in Capricorn and Moon in Taurus, so I'm very earthy, but...
That's over my head. Maybe you can explain it to me sometime.
Okay.
So, Awen, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Awen Ascension. I am the world-renowned spiritual gangster. I am a psychic intuitive spiritual advisor offering sessions one-on-one, utilizing the tools of psychic visions, tarot, and astrology. I'm also a sound and energy healing facilitator, as well as a new and full moon gathering facilitator for goddesses and for all beings. And I am Fairy Poppins, so I work with families one-on-one and also offer a family music and movement and mindfulness class, as well as my new Galactic Child Yoga class will be launching this February in Pensacola.
I love it.
Well, it is a pleasure to have you here, Awen, and it sounds like you actually offer quite a bit for those who are seeking. Is there anything in particular that you find you kind of draw more of a clientele towards, particular practice?
Yeah, that's a great question. I definitely connect one-on-one with my clients more through my spiritual advising sessions, especially with tarot. I feel like people are more familiar with tarot maybe than astrology. Astrology can get very deep and very complex, like super quickly. And so I feel like tarot is almost like a picture book and people enjoy that a lot. So I feel like that is really where people are drawn.
Yeah, I've found quite a lot of illumination, particularly from tarot readings. It's great too when you can find someone who's familiar with a lot of different crafts. So it's very, very intriguing to me that you have such experience and knowledge to be able to share with our community.
Yeah, it's truly an honor. I mean, I started studying astrology when I was in high school, like 15 years old, and I had a really amazing mentor who I say she initiated me into tarot and astrology and Reiki and holding ceremony through being my very first experience with all of those things growing up in kind of like a Christian household where that was very taboo, but I felt like I could trust her to kind of facilitate those offerings for me. And through the information that I received from those sessions, those readings, it really sparked a fire within me of curiosity, especially with astrology. And so I, went back to school and started looking up my birth chart and then started studying my friends' birth charts and started studying birth charts with people that I had crushes on and just kind of, escalated from there and became a really beautiful way to understand myself on a deeper level and the energetics that I came here to experience. I believe that we have a choice of when we're born, and also understand the people around me and how the planets interact with each other in the different signs and how that plays out in real life.
That's beautiful.
And it really plays into tarot as well because the cards are connected to the astrology signs and to the planets. So having, that background knowledge of almost 2 decades, working with astrology. Oh my gosh, I'm giving away my age here, but it's fine. Almost 2 decades of working with astrology, it really deepens the practice of working with the tarot and kind of understanding the archetypes and the energy that's present in the cards.
I love that that little hint at the Christian background and how it was kind of like it was a taboo subject? Was it kind of like a fundamental Christian thing, or?
Well, we dabbled in a lot of different churches growing up, mainly like Lutheran and Methodist, but I did go to a Baptist school for a hot minute, which was a really wild and interesting experience. And then my other side of the family was like deeply Pentecostal, which is a whole other wild experience.
Like getting inhabited by the Spirit?
Oh yeah, speaking in tongues and like laying on of hands and tambourines and people running through the churches and just, it was...
I love that until they start talking about hell, but I'm like, until that happens, I'm like, you guys are lit.
Right. I'm like, is this a static dance? I feel like it's, coming from maybe the right place, but then there's certain like fundamental beliefs that come through and I'm like, are we talking about the same God? Like, it just kind of, it doesn't really resonate. Yeah. So when I received my first tarot reading, I was like really nervous and I was like, I don't know if I want a tarot reading. And she said, well, it's totally up to you. It's really just a snapshot of the energy that's present around you right now and could help you have some deeper understanding into what's going on. And, I took a moment and I prayed about it, honestly, which, I still do pray. I feel like mantras and meditation is a form of prayer. So 15-year-old me took a second and prayed about it and like felt into it. And I felt like it was okay for her to do that. And it really did support me in that time when I felt, at 15, your emotions are crazy and you're figuring out who you are. And high school is, it can be a really challenging experience for a lot of people. So yeah, that was quite a gift. And I'm glad that I, stepped outside of the box, because now the box is like, I understand the purpose that it served in my life, but the outside is so freaking rad. So
you're saying you understand the purpose of like the Christian structure?
Yeah. I feel like, growing up in that environment, I'm grateful that I grew up in a space that was faith-based, because it's something that I've always felt a really deep connection with the divine. I did go through my like goth phase, and like, I don't know if God's real and that kind of, experience. But it's been something that I always come back to, is this really strong connection to the creator of all that is. And while, many Christians maybe don't necessarily agree with what I do or how I connect with God, I trust it, and it feels, very real and very valid to me. And so I'm grateful to have had that like foundation and background, because I feel like it supports me even still today, and allows me to see those who, to understand like the true compassion of God. Right. And the true compassion of our creator, and not, I didn't get so caught up on the like hellfire and brimstone that was kind of shoved down our throats, because that wasn't how I experienced creator. We go through challenges and trials and tribulations in life. And, some people seek to blame God for that. Some people seek to blame other entities for that. But I think that's just part of life and how we are, given the opportunity to grow or not, and so, life hasn't always been all sunshine and rainbows. There's been some very intense like trauma and challenges. And I feel like when we're children, especially coming up in a household that is kind of emotionally maybe not as supportive as children really require, like it can heighten your ability, like your empathic abilities, like your intuitive abilities, because you learn like the survival mechanism of reading like your parents or your family in order to stay safe, right? Or in order not to set them off or what have you. And so I feel like even that served a really beautiful purpose in my life. And it's something that I've been able to work with as like a personal alchemy. I find that a lot of the clients who are drawn to work with me have similar stories or similar backgrounds, or just have some sort of resonant tone that, I have the medicine to offer them for where they are in their life right now.
What is personal alchemy?
Oh, good question. So My interpretation of personal alchemy is, it can even be like so simple as like a shift of your perception, which honestly really can be very simple, but also very complex at times. But it's shifting something that was lead, that was heavy, that was dark, that was challenging, difficult, and learning to turn it into your own personal gold. Right. And so, you know, shifting from the mindset of a victim, right? Oh gosh, this happened to me. My life was this, my life was that, to how could this happen for me? Right. And instead of being stuck in this place of like a traumatized, like hurt child, you know, through inner child work, which is something we can get into as well, I've learned to see the gift, you know, in those challenges that I faced, and allow them to make me stronger, you know, sometimes through years of therapy, sometimes through, you know, deep meditation, or just like physically moving through like the energy or the emotions that are, you know, coming through in my body. But yeah, that's personal alchemy to me, is to take something that was like shitty and turn it into magic.
I love that.
Yeah.
Sage and I have actually talked about that. That's a very reoccurring theme so far in the podcast, is the idea of basically being able to integrate the things that have happened to you into something positive. And also you talking about inner child stuff. I'd love to hear more about that at some point too, because that's something we keep talking about.
Yeah, totally. Well, I feel like that's been part of my life for a really long time, because I did experience so much in my childhood. And it's interesting when you get into astrology charts, you can kind of see all of my planets in Capricorn are in my second house, which the houses represents different areas in our lives. And the second house is like our childhood, right? And so having so much condensed there kind of speaks to my experience of having a lot happen in my life at a young age. But with inner child healing, it's something that I've been really playing with a lot, especially as I'm working with children and families more one-on-one. Children just play, right? They just imagine and create and believe. They say exactly what's on their mind. They're not worried about what people think about them, right? And I think that's so inspiring, and it's something that we kind of can lose as adults. And so a lot of inner child healing for me has been leaning into that playful energy, right? Leaning into, I can be very serious, but I'm also like very playful and joking, like, and so a lot of, you know, meditation has been supportive through my inner child work. I will, you know, go into a meditative state and connect with. Recently, I had a memory come up that I had repressed that was really intense. At first, it was a lot to kind of deal with, but I went into a meditative state and I went to the child version of me that the memory came from, right? I came to her as my present self and my highest self kind of like embodied in one. And I stopped the situation that was happening that I had seen in my memory, and like this very powerful, like strong kind of, you know, Kali Ma energy came through and like just stopped the situation from happening and scooped up little me in her arms. And I took her to a safe place, you know, just had a conversation with her, hugged her, talked to her about what happened, and let her know that like it's not always going to be this way, you know, and let her know that she has me here, you know, even if nobody else was there for her at that time, like I'm here for her now. And that's another element of personal alchemy, you know, is just like connecting with those little parts of ourselves that are still hurting and still operating in the subconscious mind. Being able to like take your power back in some way, you know, because like a 3-year-old doesn't have the language, right? Or doesn't have the ability to express or stop things from happening necessarily. But me at this age, like, heck yeah, I'm going to advocate for that child, you know? And so it's had a really interesting impact on me as I've been, you know, continuing to walk down this path and connecting with her more and more. I connected with my 10-year-old self in an ecstatic dance, and she was just miserable. Like that's the age that my parents got divorced and the kids at school were teasing me and just, you know, all that fun stuff that happens at the turn of our lives when all the hormones kick in too, right? And so I was doing an embodiment practice, and she I saw her there with me. She had been coming through for a few months, and she was just kind of sad and like frumpy, just not really like wanting to dance. And I started dancing like a goof, and she like cheered up and we started dancing together. And then I like scooped her up into my arms and she became like a little baby, and I just got to love on that little baby, and it was really sweet. And I feel like that part of me has been kind of transformed in some ways through that experience and through those experiences. So that's how I love to work with the inner child. And, you know, I feel like that work is so important as I'm, you know, Fairy Poppins and working with the young community here in Pensacola and developing offerings for them, because there's really not too much for the littles. Especially I love working with like birth through age 6, especially 3 to 6 is like a very fun age. There's like, you know, story time at the libraries and a couple of other things, but I'm really passionate about offering like consciousness building activities, you know, yoga, connection with their mind, body, spirit. So it's important for me as a space holder and a facilitator for them to do the work myself, right? Yeah.
I love that.
Wow, just so much of that unpacking really just resonates in multiple ways for me. I think it's particularly inspiring to find somebody just anywhere in our communities and abroad that have committed to some form of inner work. Especially recently, it seems that many people are exploring more child work, more of that inner child, in attempt to heal their traumas. And it's currently something I'm experiencing as well. So it's just really remarkable to know that there's others out there that are and have done the same. It's important, super important work.
I think if our parents, you know, God has loved them. I think if our parents had the tools that we have today, that a lot of our childhoods would have gone differently. You know, presently I'm a free agent. You know, I don't have children. I'm not married. And so I'm the cool auntie, you know, and but I very much believe that this upcoming generation, I mean, they're our future, you know, this is their planet. We're just borrowing it for them. And I really feel a strong call within me to leave this place better than I found it for them to inherit, you know? And so part of that is, you know, caring for our planet, caring for the climate and the environment. And part of that is like caring for ourselves, you know, and being stewards of this incoming generation and able to hold true space for them. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that idea. There's this concept of generational trauma, right? Is this trauma that's passed from one generation to another. Human history has been really traumatic. There's a psychologist named Steven Pinker. He's saying that now is the least violent time ever in history. Like, we look at the news and we look at things and it looks like the world is in chaos, but really this is the nicest the planet basically has ever been.
Wow.
Oh yeah, definitely. To kind of piggyback on that, like even just 10,000 years ago, we were hitting each other on the head just to get a meal, you know?
Yeah.
It seems now though we're encountering a different kind of danger, and it's much more like spiritual, it seems, in many ways.
Yeah. In a lot of ways, we also live in a much more complicated world.
Yeah. With a lot more distractions. You know, I feel like 10,000 years ago, we didn't have doom scrolling on Instagram. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I can't have TikTok on my phone.
No, I just uninstalled it this week. I was like, I don't go here.
Yeah.
Tried, but...
Wake up 2 hours later and you're like, what?
What am I doing?
Why do I feel so empty? Yeah.
Where's my dopamine?
Yeah.
This is wonderful though to and as we're all kind of waking up to the development of our lives, and as we're literally alchemizing, we're becoming magical again. And there seems to be a growing number of us now, people doing this kind of work, and then being able to provide the service so that others can come in and see, even if it may not align with their paths, to at least see and to know that there are are other ways of looking at life. There's other perspectives.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, definitely. I feel so grateful to have found this community. April will be 7 years since I stopped drinking alcohol. And yeah, and I want to talk about like a paradigm shift. That was huge. You know, my initial goal was just to go a month without drinking, and I saw so many positives come through that first month that I decided to, you know, see if I could do another month without drinking. And as the time went on, I noticed that a lot of, you know, the habits that I was in at that time, a lot of the people that I was connected with at that time started to fall away. You know, those friendships of like, hey, you want to go hit the bar, you want to go dance, whatever, those kind of stopped being so prevalent in life. And it really created a lot of space. And so I was able to fill that space with, like, I picked up hula hooping, which was really fun. And it's one of my favorite, like, movement expressions. It's like flow dancing. But I recognized that, like, the crux of alcohol for me was social anxiety. And it wasn't until I moved to Pensacola and met, you know, certain members of our community that I stopped feeling social anxiety around people. You know, at that point, I think I was 3 years free from alcohol and went to my first ecstatic dance, and like a sober conscious dance experience was like, what? Everything that I had, you know, been dreaming of and praying for. Just to be surrounded by a community of beings who are, you know, supportive of the lifestyle that I chose, you know, kind of on my own, really was deeply supportive and continues to be. So I think sometimes we can shift something that seems small, right, in our lives. It can have such a big impact. You know, something that I've been focusing on now is micro shifts. Instead of trying to make something giant happen all at once, you know, it's much more manageable. And I feel in the long term, something you're more likely to stick with if you make a micro shift instead of taking a giant leap.
Is there an example that you could share with us?
Let's see.
I love that concept.
Yeah. So I've started like taking a shower first thing in the morning. You know, sometimes I would shower at nighttime or shower at different times, but when the water hits me, it's like, I'm ready to wake up, ready to face the day. Then I get to moisturize and like get dressed and ready for my day. That was a micro shift from like,
There's a ritual of self-care that's now scheduled.
yeah, totally.
I like that idea.
Yeah, just something small, you know, drinking green tea instead of coffee if you want to switch away from, you know, caffeine or away from coffee. Some people drink multiple cups a day, you know. Making a small shift can make a big difference, big impact.
I think that also... Go ahead, Sage.
I was just thinking of my personal experience switching from coffee to green tea. I did that for about 3 years, and it was marvelous. It was so good. Unfortunately, I went back to coffee.
Yeah. No shame in that game.
Yeah, but I definitely agree with the power of micro shifts. It feels minute in the scheme of things, but yeah, I personally have started just a tarot reading each morning. I'll just flip a card and go, okay, this is what to look forward to. And maybe not even putting it necessarily in like definitive context for the day, but at least to give myself some awareness for what I might need to pay attention to.
Yeah, totally. Or the energetics, you know, to look out for throughout the day. Or I like to pull tarot cards as anchors. During my readings, I'll typically pull an anchor card as here is what you can anchor into, you know, and how you can give the rest of this reading, you know, condense it into this one card as a space to really focus into. Yeah.
I was thinking about goal research, and there's this idea of cascading goals, where if you have just these incredibly large goals, they can be very crippling, because if you don't reach them, you'll just maybe self-hate or whatever cycle you're going to go through. But the idea of that there can be little goals that will add up. And not only that, was you get these little wins over and over again. So you're creating a positive feedback system for yourself where you're empowering yourself. You know that you're completing things. Your brain is like, here's some dopamine. Thanks for doing that.
I was going to say that sounds like dopamine hacking. Yeah, because if we set out like a long-term large goal for ourselves, the dopamine kind of gets released as we're like climbing up that mountain, so to speak. But once we make it to the peak of the mountain, it's like, okay, now what? There can be this really big fall of dopamine release. So I love that idea of having like cascading goals rather than one just major goal. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also feel like a lot of the things like mental hangups that I have are when we talk about something that's small. I mean, you could change probably one thought about yourself and it would completely change the trajectory of your life.
Totally. Say one affirmation, at the beginning of your day. Like just have it written on your mirror and repeat that to yourself. I think that can make a big shift. And then also with like the music that we listen to, I've been listening to, I kind of think of them as like vibe up mantras. I've been listening to a lot of Tony Jones and Sri Kala, and it's very uplifting lyrics that are like to great beats, and just affirming positive things, and positive truths, I'll say, that can really have an impact on your subconscious mind. I feel like the music that we listen to, the movies, videos, all of that makes an imprint on us in some way. And so, if you're watching a lot of horror movies, you might not feel super great, right? Or you might. I mean, some people who have PTSD like respond really well to watching horror films, and some people who have PTSD are like very averse to horror films. But I feel like, I don't know, I'd rather watch Studio Ghibli any day of the week. So,
yeah. Ponyo, little fishy in the sea. Yeah, Miyazaki for life.
That's right. I got the tattoo, man.
Do you?
I do. Yeah. Not Miyazaki for life, but I have Totoro roasting marshmallows over calcifer with little Kodama hanging around in the background.
I love that.
Yeah.
Sage, if you don't have anything, I have a question.
I would love for you to ask your question.
My question is, I'm curious how your perspective has changed. So you've been following this thing for a long time. You've been looking at tarot and looking at astrology. And so have you had perspective shifts or anything like that? Does that not make any sense?
Has my perspective on tarot and astrology shifted?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Over time. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I've built like a connection. This is going to sound super woo-woo, but I've built a connection with the planets like beyond just their archetype. I feel them very much as like energetic beings that we can connect with, and depending on where they are in the chart, they play kind of different roles, so to speak. And so, yeah, I've had major perspective shifts just constantly. That's part of why I love this work so much, is you think you have things kind of figured out and you realize that there's a whole new element or a whole new way to understand things. And I think as we go through different experiences in our lives and different like areas of growth, our relationships shift and change. And so I think of my connection to the tarot and to the astrology as very much a relationship, like a friendship in some ways with these beings, with these energetics and these archetypes. And so, as I'm changing, my relationship with them is shifting and changing as well. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. And something that I've been bringing into my sound healing sessions is working with my voice. I used to just incorporate my singing bowls and drumming and rattling and all of that. But I was hearing like different pitches and frequencies as I was playing the bowls. And so I started singing along with it. And that like opened up an entire channel for music just to pour through in these sound healing sessions. it's been such a beautiful exploration since then, because when I was little, I would sing songs about whatever we were doing. If we were, looking at ducks on a lake, I'd be singing about those ducks on the lake, right? And somewhere along the line, I kind of lost that, just enjoyment of music, and so it feels really good to be bringing that back into and incorporating that as part of my spiritual practice. Whereas previously when I was studying opera, it was more, the focus of like music performance is kind of competition based, right? It's to like be the very best. It's like Pokemon, and opera's like Pokemon. I said it.
She wants to be the very best.
Like no one ever was. But the thing is, like, I didn't care about that. I didn't care about being the best or, the chosen. I just loved creating music. I loved learning songs and singing and portraying, a story or an emotion to the audience. I wasn't there to be better than anybody else. And so being in a program that was deeply competitive, I kind of stepped away from music. It kind of like took away that enjoyment of creation of music for me. And it wasn't until recently that music was brought back in as a spiritual practice, right? And we have so many sound healers. I mean, there's millions of sound healers in the world, but everybody brings their own unique kind of energy to the sound baths. So there's truly no competition, right? And even with tarot readers and astrologers, like we all have our own flavor, so to speak, that we bring to the meal or bring to the table. And so the people who are drawn to work with me may not be drawn to work with some of those other, psychics or sound healing facilitators. So it's been really beautiful to kind of come full circle in that way, because when I first stepped into the world of considering myself a professional psychic, which at this point, I do, I did feel that sense of like competition, because there are people who have been doing it for a very long time. But as I learned and as I worked with clients and as I, deepened into my own personal practice, I was able to allow my ego to kind of step away from the process and understand that like we all have a gorgeous message to share, and we all belong here. We're all important. And so, I celebrate my fellow psychics and I'm so grateful for them because I get to learn from them too. So.
I love that. There's a lot to unpack in there. Yeah. Go ahead, Sage.
I was just thinking it's how beautiful it is to just have that level of inclusivity for everyone to embrace one another, not to necessarily feel the repercussions of like a competitive business structure. It's more fluid. It feels organic. I see it as being very important in our communities to embrace each other's gifts, our different flavors, our uniqueness. That's how we become resilient and strong together.
Yeah. And I love this idea that we keep going back to of the joy of things. Like you're talking about how when it was a competitive opera program, you lost that kind of emotional, joyous connection to singing. I mean, whether you're a secular atheist or a bhakti, like most people know that sound is important and our voices are important, and using them, it can be so healing and so grounding and so much fun.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I miss singing with people. I was at an open mic night last night, and it was cool when people did originals that would be like, wow, this is really interesting music. But it was like, oh, I know this song, I will sing it with you, and the other people next to me will sing it with you. Yeah, that's one of the things I miss most about church is singing with other people. So
I love that you brought that up, because open mic night is such a beautiful space to connect with our community. I went to Mahabhuta Yoga Festival for the first time this year and experienced Sean Johnson.
Oh my God.
Oh my goddess.
I've heard about him. Haley, who I used to play with, that was her dude.
Like, I have never I've been to so many festivals and I've seen so much music, but I have never experienced energy like Sean Johnson in the tent at Mahabuta, because it was my first experience chanting. My first experience chanting back and forth and singing with this group of beings that are filled with people that I love, right? And the power behind singing together, behind chanting together, like, was mind-blowing, honestly. I didn't even realize how much I was missing it, you know, because I grew up singing in choirs and church and all of that too. And, you know, I definitely miss it. Chanting circles are really starting up in the local area in Pensacola for sure. And it's such a powerful experience to just sing together, to express together. Even if you don't sing, right? Even if you think you can't sing, like, let your voice be heard and add your flavor to the mix. Baby, it's a gumbo.
It is a gumbo.
It's interesting to me how so often we find people who have just suppressed their voice to just kind of close it all in. People have forgotten how to use their inner voice again. And it's interesting that I was listening to an interview earlier today. This man was talking about PTSD groups with Veterans Affairs, and he was a veteran and has this whole preparedness business that got shut down. But he was talking specifically about these trauma groups that, you know, he was describing from Native American references. When warriors would come home from battle, they would sit in circle and discuss the traumas that they endured. And they would share that with the community, and each member of the community would kind of take a piece of that trauma. And he said most of the time these days, especially those who go to war or see such violence, they keep it all in. They suppress it. They don't utilize their voice. And it's another beautiful thing I'm seeing coming in back into the community. Is this it's like people are trying to shake themselves out of this state of silence.
Absolutely. I mean, I think of like our parents' generation and even our grandparents' generation, where if you sought out support for a mental health issue, you were seen as crazy. You know, you were just painted with that brush. And so there's like a level of shame that was implanted because of that, and a level of, you know, you have to keep it to yourself because what will other people think, right? And I feel like that's something huge that we're doing, is breaking through those barriers and saying like, hey, we are all people, right? We all have our stuff. It's okay. You know, it's okay to ask for help. I really feel like that's something that is a very strong call for our generation, is like speaking up. Yeah.
It's a good generation to be in if you want to talk about your trauma and talk about emotions. Yeah.
And even if you don't want
to talk about expression.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really talk into our expression of our emotions and finding ways to like move past this kind of like status quo that we've been in.
Yeah. And you were talking about, go ahead, Sage.
We were discussing previously many times about our first encounter together, our meeting, and your vocal expression into that fire that night was incredible. Like, what a way to see somebody for the first time.
I just screamed like crazy.
Love that. Yes. Unleash, honey.
I think a lot of people wait to the point where they do have to scream to open their throat chakra.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, and the things that we don't express, you know, or aren't able to release in some way, like we're not taught somatic shaking. You know what I mean? We're not taught to channel our feelings through like embodied movement or dance. We're like, those practices are just kind of fresh in my consciousness, at least, you know, in the last few years. But, you know, bringing it back to the example of the military veterans, you know, who have experienced this incredible trauma and PTSD of war and battle zones that, you know, thankfully we don't have to experience. The stigma of speaking about PTSD, I think makes it all the worse, right? The stigma of like not being able to seek out help, and things are changing in the military slowly, but surely. But I think it is so important for us to find ways to release that energy, release that emotion, release that experience, whether it's through journaling or, meditating or kickboxing or, speaking with a therapist or sharing with your friends. It's so important to get these to kind of purge, that experience and be witnessed in a safe space of that purging, so that we don't continue carrying it with us, because then it becomes like a poison.
Yeah, for us, and then for the people we're around, and maybe the people that we create. Yeah, definitely. And I love the practice of the Native American warriors coming back and sharing their experiences with the community as a whole. I think that's really beautiful.
And the cool thing I noted from that particular story was that he described it as if each member of the community would take a piece of it from him. So as if everyone felt not only equally compelled but equally responsible for taking this trauma from this person, so that they can heal in a good way and return to normal life.
It probably also changes the calculus of the community when they're deciding whether they want to go to war or not.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I feel like it definitely in our society, their trauma and our lives are largely separate. I think of, Afghanistan and Iraq veterans, there's all the statistic about how many of them are killing themselves and things like that. But by and large, we don't have to feel their pain. Yeah. So that's kind of a beautiful thing that a community would share that with them.
Totally.
Yeah.
Or even just offer them a safe space to express it. To express what they experienced or share their experience, because I think it's the feeling of being so alone, and then losing friends that they, or connections that they created over there with people who do understand their experiences, committing suicide. And that, I think, is just, it can turn into a black hole, it can turn into just the snake eating its own tail. Yeah.
I think so much of our journeys are trying to figure out where we sit in all of this. I think for many people do look towards things that they view as being higher than themselves, whether that's God or planets or anything that might just be outside of the realm of their power. A lot of people seek things that they don't know or understand, and there's multiple ways to come to that truth. And I find now we're doing it more collectively and more compassionately than we have in a long time. I think about things like astrology and whatnot. Like there's a lot of mixed reviews. Some people follow it to the T. Some people believe it's all hogwash. And I remember speaking to somebody who was just genuinely curious about astrology and how it makes sense. And I told them, it doesn't matter if you believe necessarily in the interpretations or meanings behind planetary alignments or where the stars are at. You can think of it like a body of a huge entity in space that pulls on you from different parts of our galaxy, different parts of our solar system. Think of the moon. The moon affects us every single day. I think of it with Jupiter, where Jupiter is sitting right now. It pulls us in a certain way that we may have been pulled in a time before, or in long time before, and it all becomes this like just beautiful understanding that even if you don't believe in a certain way of interpretations, you can at least put things in a perspective that can make sense for you in your own personal pursuits.
Absolutely.
I know with you, Julius, you've talked about not necessarily knowing or really having like goals in mind or things that you feel drawn towards to accomplish in this life. I would love to hear your thoughts on just astrology and these kinds of practices and how they might align with you.
Was that a question to me, Sage?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, we are approaching the hour. I'll be concise. I am a skeptic of almost everything metaphysical. I consider myself an atheist, but I have lots of people that I love who engage in these spaces, and I can see the direct consequences of their involvement for the better in a lot of these things. And for me personally, whether astrology affects our mood, our personality, or any of those things, whether that's true or not, people like Awen who are used to navigating those spaces as they interact with people, I think that whether they're literally true or not, they have a metaphorical truth because they allow us to, they're a mirror to allow us to understand ourselves and other people. And so I can see a beauty and practical purpose of them.
That's so sweet.
Thanks. You set me up, Sage.
That was so sweet, though.
Thank you, Sage. Awen, is there something that you would like to leave us with? Also, like, if there is or if there isn't, also for how people can get in touch with you, what kind of people you would like to help?
Yeah, absolutely. So, let's see. Something that's been coming through really strong for me is trust the wobble. It goes back to what I was saying before about micro steps, micro movements, taking pressure off of yourself to dive all in or forge ahead in one direction. Understand that sometimes we do take 2 steps forward and sometimes we take a step back, and that's okay because that shows us the contrast to what we do and don't want to create in our lives. And so if you are in a space where you feel like you're really driven and called in a certain direction, but you're not quite there yet, just allow your path to unfold in front of you and keep following the steps. Sometimes the only step we can see is the next one in front of us, and that's okay. To reach me, I'm very active on Instagram. My Instagram is at Awen, AWEN, Ascension, ASCENSION. I'm also on Facebook, and my website is www.awenascension.com. It's a great place to get in contact with me and set up sessions with me, and I would love to hear from you. Yeah.
Thank you, Awen. It was a pleasure to have you today.
Well, it was wonderful to be here.
Thank you, Sage.
Thank you, everyone. So much love.
All the love.
Thank you for listening. We hope you will join us next episode where we will be talking to Naomi Inamori. She's the owner of Sunstone Clay Company, a student of transpersonal psychology, and a cancer survivor. We love you, wish you well, and hope to talk to you soon. We love you.
We love you.
The Awen I sing, from the deep I bring it. The Awen I sing, from the deep I bring it. The Awen I sing, the Awen I sing, the Awen I sing, from the deep